the chairman.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm going to call the September 5th meeting of the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting to order. If everybody who is able and willing to stand, and we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. First thing on our agenda is the approval of the agenda. Are there any updates or changes to the agenda as presented?
I do have one. If you could clarify for the audience and regarding the speaking to the various points on the agenda before we approve it, that would, I think, be helpful.
Fantastic idea. So on our agenda today, item number 3, we have 10 minutes total time for anything that is not on today's agenda. So if we'll invite people up to speak on anything that's not on the agenda. We do have some agenda items with the Parks Amenity Plan, the Family Aquatic Center, Youth Baseball Softball Complex, and the Alimagnet Natural Resources Management Plan. So if you are speaking on those topics, please wait until those are on the agenda. We will have our staff reports and updates, and then we will invite people to, if anybody wants to speak at that point, again, we'll invite people up to make comments at that time. So, and while we're talking about that, make sure in the back there is a sign-in sheet. Please sign in with your name and your address. That is really helpful. So please make sure you do that, and we'll give some instructions when people come up to speak on those during the agenda.
Great, thank you. With that, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, there's been a motion. Is there a
Second.
motion and a second? Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? The agenda carries. That we've got our agenda. So item number 3 is the audience participation. Again, first and foremost, thank you so much for seeing a lot of great faces and coming and joining us here at the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee meeting. We really appreciate having you here. So this is the time where we invite anybody to come up and speak on anything that is not on tonight's agenda. So if anybody has anything at this time, please step forward to the podium. All right, well, not seeing any at this time, so we'll just kind of move on. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the June 2024 minutes, which were provided in the packet. Did everybody have a chance to look at those? Any changes or updates from staff or committee on this?
No.
Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the June 2024 minutes.
Move to approve minutes as submitted.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the June 2024 minutes as presented in the packet, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Hearing none. The minutes are approved. Cruising right along, our agenda item, the agenda A, is the update on the Parks Amenity Plan process, which will be presented by Eric Carlson, our Parks and Rec Director. Welcome, Eric.
Welcome. Thank you. Just gonna. Yep. All right, Madam Chair, members of the committee, appreciate it. Want to give a little update on our Parks Amenity Planning. Committee members will recall that basically the month of August, we met in every single park in town, so 50 parks in town. Wanted to get feedback from residents about a draft amenity plan that we had put together. And so I just want to kind of review a little bit of how did we get there and where are we trying to get to. So back in November of 23, residents of Apple Valley had the opportunity to vote on a parks referendum. And on that date, about 25% of the registered voters voted on question number 1, and about 66% of those folks voted in favor of question number 1, which was to invest about $66.7 million in trails, natural resources, the Apple Valley Community Center Senior Center, the Family Aquatic Center, preservation of park system assets, Kelly Park, Hayes Arena, the Youth Baseball Softball Complex, and Redwood. There was a second question on the ballot that day, and that was for an additional $6.5 million for the Redwood Community Pool. Again, about 25% of the registered voters voted, and that question passed on about a 60 to 40% margin. Again, $6.5 million. So we ended up, residents ended up passing basically a $73,250,000 referendum to cover the items that you see on your screen. The Parks Amenity Plan is all about the park improvements in basically the neighborhood park system, so the 50 parks that we have across town. And that deals with playgrounds, courts, so basketball courts, tennis courts, athletic field lighting, irrigation systems, trails, pickleball courts, our skate park, and park system signs. We have 51 parks in town. The map on the right shows half-mile circle around every park that we have in town. And you can see that we have 54 playgrounds, 21 basketball courts, 22 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, 13 shelters, 10 outdoor hockey rinks, 8 pleasure skating rinks, about 50 ball fields, about 39 rectangular fields, and about 8 recreation buildings in our park and recreation system. As a part of that, let's see here. So as a part of that $16,750,000, that plus the $2 million for trails gets you to about $19 million if I round the number. I'm going the wrong direction, sorry. These are the improvements that we're trying to make, and you can see that total is about $23.4 million, so about $4 million more than the $19 million that the referendum provided. So we're looking at making about $4.8 million worth of improvements toward the playgrounds that we have in town. That does not include the playground at Redwood, which is going to be an inclusive playground. That playground investment will come out of the project budget. That does not include the playground at Kelly Park. That playground will come out of the project investment. It also does not include any of the playgrounds that haven't met the end of their useful life yet. As an example, Quarry Park, I think it's about 2030 before that playground has to be replaced. So that playground and a few others like it are not part of that $4.8 million investment. And we've got about $500,000 for basketball courts, about $2.8 million for tennis courts, about $1.3 million to repair and replace backstops across town, about $1 million to do some parking lot work. Not as much as we had hoped to do, but that's about what the budget's going to allow. Got about $1 million for the pickleball courts at Johnny Cake. We've got about $1 million for the skate park at Johnny Cake. Park signage, replacing all of our park system signage is about $1 million. Updating our lightings, our athletic field lightings, about $2 million. Doing about $3 million worth of trail work. We wanted to replace 2 irrigation systems, one at Johnny Cake East and one at Johnny Cake West. We're only going to be able to do the one at Johnny Cake West. Then we have about nearly $4 million worth of planning and engineering that we need for all of these projects to be able to put the plans and specs together, go out to bid, do construction, that type of stuff. So it ends up being about $23.4 million. And so the way we get from $19 million to $23 million is that we've been pretty successful in getting some outside money or grant money from the state and from the federal government, which helps us make more investments than what voters actually approved. And so we're choosing to put all of that money into our neighborhood parks so that we can try to make those be as best as they can be with the money that we have available. The Park Amenity Study talked about having 20 different park service areas ranging from a half a square mile to a square mile, basically demarcated by major roadways in town. Again, the 51 parks, 54 playgrounds, basketball courts, and tennis courts. This is just a little bit of a comparison of how Apple Valley compares to some of our neighbors. And then the column just to the left of Apple Valley is the average of the 3 to the left, Burnsville, Eagan, and Lakeville. So you can see that from a population standpoint, we're about 10,000 people smaller than the average. Our square miles of land is about half at 17, but we're more densely populated than our neighbors are. So we have about 3,400 people per square mile versus 2,300 people per square mile. We have fewer parks in total. We have fewer park acreage in total than our neighbors do. So then the math works out to be that our average park size is about 14 acres, where the average for the other communities is about 18. We have 44 school and city tennis courts in our community versus the average of 42. So that puts it as about 1,300 per capita versus 1,700. We have 54 playgrounds in town versus the average of 50. And per capita, that's about 1,064 playgrounds versus about 1,400. And if you look at playgrounds on a square mile basis, we have about 3.2 playgrounds per square mile versus about 1.6. So this map just shows the parks in town. The blue circles are half mile circle around playgrounds that we have in town. The red circles are school district or school sites. And so you can see that the city is well covered by playgrounds around our community, and so people have pretty good access to playgrounds in town. Whoops. So a little bit of an overview from at least from a staff perspective on the neighborhood park meetings that we've been attending. And again, we met in every single park in town. We met with well over 1,000 people attended those meetings, so I think that was great participation from the community. It showed that they were paying attention. It showed that they were engaged and involved, and they gave us a lot of great feedback about what they wanted to see and what they didn't want to see happen in the park system. And so we're collecting that feedback and we're listening to that feedback, and we'll be updating our plan, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Unfortunately, over the course of about 14 nights and 50 meetings, we did have a couple of weather-related issues and where we couldn't meet in the parks. Our backup plan was to meet at the senior center, and we kind of said that up front, and we posted things on social media and on our website when those types of events happened. So we moved 6 meetings to the senior center. Unfortunately, people for the most part, didn't choose to drive to the senior center to participate, which was somewhat predictable. That's why it was so important to go to the parks and meet in the parks. We wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to come and meet with us and learn a little bit more about what was happening. As of August 29th, we've had about 423 comments on our social pinpoint site. The site's still open, so we're still taking comments. I know we've gotten more comments since the 29th because I look at them on a fairly regular basis, and those comments can be made through the 13th of September. And I've reviewed about a half of the comments that we received. Generally speaking, and the comments that people told us at the meetings themselves were, generally people aren't that supportive of repurposing playgrounds or tennis courts. Not a huge surprise, but that's generally how people are feeling about their playgrounds and their tennis courts. There seems to be a fairly strong interest in additional pickleball courts in town and larger basketball courts. Where we do have basketball courts, a lot of our basketball courts are considered half courts, and so they want to see a court large enough to have a hoop on each end. We're obviously still reviewing comments. We're still taking comments, so we haven't closed our listening yet. We are still listening to what people have to say. So from here, again, the social pinpoint site will be open until the 13th of September. We encourage anyone and everyone to continue to make comments on that site so that we can make sure that we've heard from everybody. Based on the comments that we've received both at our in-person meetings and on the social pinpoint site, we'll be updating the plan based on those comments. We will do our very best to make people as happy as possible. It's also safe to say that probably not everyone will be satisfied, but we're going to do our very best to satisfy as many people as possible based on the comments that they've left. In October, the Parks Committee will be kind of reviewing those comments and some of our thoughts about how do we address these comments and what can we do to meet as many people's needs as possible. We will then post an updated plan on our website, and if you go to Social Pinpoint and leave a comment, one of the things you have to do is you have to leave an email address. That means we get your email address and we will send an email out to whoever leaves a comment so that you know the website's been updated, and then you can go look at the updated plan. So that would be another reason to leave a comment on the Social Pinpoint site. You'll get an email that says, hey, the plan's been updated, go to our website, take a look at it. Now give us more feedback about what you think about the updated plan. Hopefully the Parks Committee can finalize whatever our plan's going to be in the month of November, and then our city council can address it in the month of December, so that after the first of the year, we can start making actual plans on what we're going to do in our parks. And this is going to take 5 years to do, at least 5 years to do. Right now, we're saying 5 years. So we'll probably do between 6 and 8 parks a year. Not everyone's going to be able to be first. Someone's going to have to be last. But we'll also be cognizant of, what we spend today might have to be a little different than what we spend in year 5 because of inflation. And so those are some of the things that we have in the back of our mind as we plan what's going to happen. And so at this point, I can stop and answer questions that the committee members may have, and you may have some comments yourselves. And then I know that there's some people in the audience that want to make sure that their voices are heard as well.
Great. Open it to committee questions for Eric, comments.
So, one question that I have just to clarify, I understand that the plan called for the removal of some playgrounds, and that obviously wasn't popular. However, some of those playgrounds would have been at parks that had multiple playgrounds. Did we get any pushback on consolidating the multiple playground parks into just one at those parks? And how many playgrounds would that reduce by without actually losing a park with a playground?
There are, I believe it's 6 parks that have multiple playgrounds in the park. I would like to suggest that in the future, that's probably those parks are going to have a single playground and not multiple playgrounds. But we're still taking feedback, and we really don't know exactly what the plan will look like yet. But that's probably a direction I would think we would want to head, and then see what kind of feedback we get after that.
Thanks.
Other questions? Eric, I just want to, I know you've gotten quite an email list, and I think you're probably over 4,000
Oh, yeah.
emails.
Easily.
So again, just reiterating, and I'll say it more than once, to make sure that people do put comments in the social pinpoint, because and people can react to those comments. So I think that's really important. And then getting on the list so people can understand and be alerted with the next steps of this process is going to be really important. Any questions? Otherwise, I want to say, again, first and foremost, thank you to you and the staff. To have these meetings at all 50 parks is really important and a good undertaking. And I appreciate that we did have a good turnout with our residents, even the ones that may not have as many changes. And I know that we as committee members all took a couple, went there for listening sessions. So I'd like to first open it up to committee members to kind of share your thoughts and feedback first of what you heard and from the residents, and any kind of just general thoughts. So I'll open it up to committee members.
Start with you.
Yeah, I was going to say start at one end.
Okay. I heard a lot of things. Many people were there just to get updated information. They were interested in their park and their city, and they wanted just to know more. Great. That was a great opportunity. Also, there was obviously some feedback about things like, well, I heard you're going to take our park away. You're taking our park away. No, they're not. There are no parks that are going away. What about my playground? Well, the original plan did have some playground changes in it, especially for ones that were at the end of their useful life, out of date, can't get parts for them, etc., which seems to me a reasonable but debatable view to have, and we're glad we got feedback from people on that. People are obviously interested in their park. That's great and wonderful, but we're also bigger than an individual park, and we have to look at big picture things too. So,
Thanks.
Yeah, my feedback that I heard, just, I guess, 2 things. One is there wasn't clarity on what a natural playground is, and people just really wanted to understand, well, oh, it's really a playground. And when that was explained to them, it was like eye-opening, that they realized, oh, we're getting rid of plastic and replacing it with something that's more natural looking. Still, I know it's not plastic, but it's not natural material. But the point being, they didn't understand what that was. So, and I think that ties into the second thing I heard, was that it was just an overwhelming amenity plan, that it really needed some type of summary to say, here's a 3-page summary of what all this is with that big 20-page and mouse type used as an appendix that people can reference. So I think to make that whole plan a little more user-friendly would help. This is the stuff I heard, that it was just an overwhelming document to look at.
Okay?
Of the 8 parks that I went to, 4 of them had no people there. Those were parks that were not going to have anything supposedly taken away from them. The playgrounds that are in those parks are going to be replaced. They're not going to lose any amenities, so I think that explains why there were no people at those 4 parks. The other parks, obviously, there was some feedback about losing a playground if that was to happen. And there were some comments about some other things too that had nothing to do with playgrounds. I mean, so it was good to kind of hear other things that people were concerned about. And but that's where I was at.
Okay?
Thanks, Mark. Craig?
Yeah, so none of the parks that I went to were slated to have anything removed, or we were rained out. Unfortunately, I was kind of a harbinger of bad weather, I guess. But the ones that I was able to attend to, that people attended, I heard a lot of interest in more native plantings and more features like that, that not everything in the park necessarily needs to be grass. Or like turf grass, and I heard some interest in some of the other amenities, maybe not as a replacement to a playground, but a butterfly garden or some sort of natural feature along a trail. One other thing that I thought was interesting is several of the parks individuals indicated that they didn't typically see any use of the volleyball courts, but that had started to change. Largely, they thought because men's volleyball is being adopted as a sport in the state, so teen boys were out playing volleyball more frequently than they ever had before. So that's kind of an influx change, but it's something to consider as we're looking at these amenities, in that as that sports popularity may rise with its addition to high school athletics, that we may want to retain some of those that were on the edge about whether or not they're used or not. But that's pretty much it for me.
Mine's relatively quick. I too was a victim of the weather. I think we set records for rain that night. So the data was a little skewed for me. The folks that did show up, and I think this was like an N of 2 or 3, were fairly positive. I'll echo both from that session and what I'm just hearing generally is just overwhelming information and a lot of clarifying questions, and probably equally divided between pain points expressed versus support. So that would be my update.
Great. I'll just add to this. Again, thank you for everybody's participation in that. I think it's really important, and appreciate everybody attending these important sessions. I heard a lot about, the playgrounds were obviously the hot topic, and then some tennis courts as well. And I guess, again, the removal of or changing of. And I think a couple things that I heard a lot that people kind of were catching on to and understanding, that all of these parks, as we update them, we need to make sure that they're ADA compatible, and that will change some of the access and the space of the kind of the surrounding and the materials and things like that. And then the other thing that I heard with playgrounds, both at ones that were going away or potentially going away, and other places, is that people really liked the idea of having a variety of playgrounds. And so there was a couple of places that talked about having themed playgrounds, or maybe a larger playground in one area, a pirate ship playground, and another one kind of a fire station playground, and having kind of some themes and some different equipment. So, looking at the different sizes of the playground, and so kind of some questions of, does everybody get a little, or can we look at this and make some really cool, different, bigger playground areas in some different areas. So I did hear that from residents at ones that were changing and also ones that were not changing. And I think the one thing that I'll say is that this is really a really unique and special opportunity that we have as Apple Valley residents to give this type of input for all of our playgrounds. And I think just kind of it's really hard when it's your playground, but looking at this truly as a entire system, I think is something that we also have to kind of keep in mind, hearing all the specific issues with the individual playgrounds and things like that. But again, looking at it as an entire city system of parks and neighborhood parks and amenities at all the parks. So I just wanted to kind of share that. One other thing that I heard that I think is really important that we heard is some of these play areas as really doing a lot of water quality work and putting in some infiltration and some ponds and things like that. So that's also really important, again, for our parks and also for our city as a whole. So that's kind of a newer thing for some people in those areas. So that was kind of new to some people, but.
I got one more. It wasn't a feedback I received at a park visit, but from one of the letters we received from a citizen who expressed concern about the schedule maybe being too aggressive. And as I look at it and think, gee, we really want to give some thoughtful consideration to this, that getting the comments done in September, revised plan approved by, or presented in October, approved in November to the council in December. I'm just a little concerned that may be aggressive, given so much that we got going on. And so that's just one additional piece of feedback that resonated with me.
Yeah, appreciate that. I guess I'll say it's a goal at this point. Whether we can achieve it or not is a whole nother story.
I think it'd be great if we could.
We'll work towards that, but we won't rush it to the point where we make a big mistake.
That's fair.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so thank you very much, Eric. At this time, we will invite any guests, our residents, our friends, our neighbors, to, if you have any comments that you would like to make on the Parks Amenity Plan, this would be the time. I'm going to ask a couple different things as you come up to the podium. First, if you can please give us your name and your address, and if you're speaking on a specific park or the plan as a whole. And, please, there's a lot of you here, and I know there's some other things on the agenda, so if you can please be respectful and 2 to 3 minutes, that would be really appreciated. This is our opportunity. There's not going to be any answers. You might have a lot of questions. Staff is here. We're here. This is really, again, to listen and hear what people have to say. So with that, I open up the mic to the podium to anybody who would like to speak on Parks Amenity Plan.
Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Frank Sachs. I live at 6603 134th Street. That's in the Greenleaf Edition, directly across the street from Greenleaf Park. I'd like to say thank you for Eric for being very attentive to all my emails and concerns and open to discussion. There were 29 meetings. There were 1,000 participants. There were well over 100 at our meeting at Greenleaf Park, over 10% of the people who showed up. Our motive, and I have given Eric our petition, which has 300 signatures, is to maintain and repurpose our tennis courts, pickleball courts. I would say that I moved to Apple Valley 43 years ago as a young father because of the attraction of the parks. The parks were close. They were places I could take my children. My children could go play when they got older, and now I go with my grandchildren. They are a community building place. In our particular case, we were motivated because our tennis courts were indicated as some that might be eliminated. And they have been a community gathering spot, not for competition, but for family gatherings and community building, spirit building, having fun together. I told Eric that I thought it was brilliant when they put the pickleball lines in, because tennis courts had started to go vacant, and it's been like revitalized. I would say we have 5 or 6 pickleball games to tennis ball. That's not to say that they aren't being used for tennis, but families are going there. People with 5-year-old children and people in their 70s who play in regular games, and we don't care that the tennis courts are 2 inches higher than the pickleball net, because we're not there for competition. We're there for spirit building. So with that said, I'd like you to maintain our courts in Greenleaf and consider doing the same thing throughout the area. I didn't hear a movement to be opposed to repurposing those courts, because we want the courts to stay in shape where they can be used. They do get cracks down the middle. They do get mud. In our cases, they're not like the ones down on by the old Andy store, which have big trees and the roots are tearing them up. There's no trees around us. So they really stay in good shape, yet there's a big hill, protects us from the wind, gives us shade, and in the morning or in the afternoon, you hear laughter and the of a pickleball. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.
I guess I will echo that. I live on 135th Street right on Greenleaf, and I can hear every time somebody's playing pickleball on those courts, and it is quite more often than it had been in the past. So they are being used. There's no doubt about it.
Anyone else?
I'm probably not going to sound as good as the last gentleman.
Glad to have you.
Very good. But my name's Christy Maxwell, and I live at 128 Chaparral Drive. My driveway is the driveway that is directly across from Chaparral. I will say we bought the house sight unseen from Georgia. I was pregnant at the time, and I didn't get to fly up to see the house. And so we moved in, and my son was 2 months old at the time. So I've now lived there for 6-7 years, and chose the house sight unseen because it was across from a neighborhood park. I didn't want to drive to a park. I want to raise my kids here. I want to run it like a free-range neighborhood where my kids can play capture the flag and solve childhood problems at the park, where they say, I'm going home, and they kind of figure out these kid problems at the park. So it was a huge draw for us. And I noticed as my kids were young, looking out the window, we have an open house floor plan, and I could see directly across to the park every day without even trying. I mean, it's just right in front of me. I can see the playground. I'll be careful to say playground, not park, okay? But the playground by volume, I mean, just the amount of kids that are in this neighborhood using the playground. I called Eric a couple of years ago, and I said, hey, is there any way we can just turn the swing set so we can there's one little baby swing and there's a kid's swing, and I said, can we just add an extra swing, pure volume? My kids don't even like the swing, they hang. And he said, vote for the referendum, because this is gonna help with getting an update to your park. So I excitedly told all my neighbors to please vote for the referendum, we can update our park, and just feeling extremely disappointed that the option presented to us is a removal of the amenity that I so much wanted. So just very, very disappointed. And if you look at the pinpoint too, every single comment, I've read it. There's not approval for this. There's not people that are excited about this. Sorry, I'm nervous.
You're doing
But yeah, it's really upsetting, and I think with all the people that are in opposition to it, yeah, maybe it's a little bit rash to make decisions right now that are kind of taking the parks away, or playground away. I like the idea of potentially changing the size of the circle to maybe something that's partway you know, a little bit smaller of a distance to say that you have to walk. And I also ask you guys to look at the topography. If you drive into our neighborhood in Palomino Hills and Chaparral, the driveway from Chaparral to Belmont from my house is a 10-minute walk. Okay, so it's like a 0.4 distance, 0.4 mile. Fine, make me walk. My kids are getting older. They're 5 and 7 now. But if I go a little bit to the right and up Chaparral and into Hidden Meadows and then up to Chaparral Court and then up Butte, which we have to close in the winter because it's so steep we can't use that road, right? I Googled Chaparral Court walking distance, 22 minutes. You got to walk back with your kids, right? That's 44 minutes now to walk with your stroller or your small child that's crying because they banged their knee or whatever. So it's just not realistic to say, oh, just go consolidate this park. I ask you guys to please drive into our neighborhood and then walk it with your 2-year-old. We want to save our playground. It's important to us, and that's how I met my friends and my community, and the reason we bought it. I also will say that we feel very duped, kind of just with the referendum and how it was phrased. You know, there's a video of a 2023 Parks referendum video advertising the referendum, and it says, quote, preserving the 51 parks of Apple Valley. The semantics of park versus playground, I think people wouldn't have been as likely to vote for the referendum if it knew 14 playgrounds were on the docket to potentially be replaced with a community garden or a butterfly garden or a natural playground. The playgrounds for natural playground are nice. I like that, but it's not as expansive to age groups that get older. It's good for little kids, but as my kids get older, they're not going to want to balance on a rock. I also say that Chaparral Park is going to stay. It's woods, it's hill, it's a sledding hill. The kids go into the woods and get sticks and build little teepees and different things anyways. I don't need a spot for that, right? I need a spot for my kid to hang. And so I would also suggest potentially a systematic update to make it more fair, because I don't want to fight my neighbors that my park's better than their park, right? But can we look at the dates that they were used, the allotted funds, nobody's playground is removed, or maybe only the one you can prove isn't being used, and then go from 1980s or 1970s, they're updated first, ours is 1984. Go in order so it's fair, you know, and consider a systematic update of the playgrounds. I don't need it to be firefighter or pirate ship themed. I honestly don't think anybody in our neighborhood cares about that. We want to raise our kids and just let them have fun at the park and build confidence. So please consider those things.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Connie Kessler. I live at 153 Chaparral Drive, and I live about a quarter of a mile down the road from Chaparral Park. I met Christy at the park, actually at a Halloween event in our neighborhood, and our daughters are 1 day apart, and they have grown up at Chaparral Park. Chaparral Park is, like I said, only a quarter of a mile down the road from my house, and Belmont Park is about 3/4 of a mile down the road from my park, or from my house, excuse me. I am at the bottom of the hill from Chaparral Court. It's part of that loop. If you look at a map, there's like a loop of Hidden Meadow and Chaparral Drive, and I am at the very bottom of that teardrop. Once you start going up either way, it starts getting into a very steep hill. And as Christy said, any of the families on that side of the neighborhood is incredibly difficult to drag your children to and from a Belmont Park if you would eliminate the playground at Chaparral Park. The children are always running up and down our streets. I often refer to our neighborhood as Mayberry, and it's one of the beautiful things of the Palomino neighborhood. It's a neighborhood that we have very proudly been able to raise our children along with our neighbors. And as Christy said, we don't want to say our parks are better than anybody else's. And I think she's come up with some very brilliant solutions to the problems that we have going on here. But I really do think that we need to look at maintenance costs in the future and not just spring this on everybody all at one time. I think that our budgeting needs to be better in the city of Apple Valley, and we need to be doing these updates in a timely fashion, not all at one time. That this needs to be a constant thing that we're doing in our parks. But if we have to do it now, we shouldn't be looking at eliminating things. We should be looking at doing small updates and eventually getting to everything, because we shouldn't be looking at how we can be decreasing things in our city to make ours less than and equal to people around us. We should be looking at how we can be doing things more and better and make our community better than the people around us, and having 14 more parks or 17 more parks or 20 more parks than our neighbors per capita is an amazing thing to do, and we shouldn't be using our money to be pulling things out in order to be less than. So those are my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Connie. Anyone else on parks amenities? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Stella Hannon, and I live in 8255 Palomino Drive. I am 14 years old, and I have lived in the neighborhood of Hidden Meadow Road for around 8 years. I recently moved a little bit away. But I grew up with the park, and that's how I made all my closest friends. And everyone's just like a community, and like there's nothing that like separates us there. And my parents never let me walk to Belmont Park when I was like 3 years old, because it's just not safe and not realistic. And so I always went to Chaparral because it was the closest. And that's how I formed like really strong bonds with people. And it's really important to me, and it's really fun to see like other kids like making like friends and like special bonds that like I made when I was like their ages and stuff. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing that with us. Anybody else? All right. Any feedback, questions from committee members on any of that? Follow up?
Just that it's very helpful to hear.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we appreciate you all coming and sharing that information and your experiences. That's really helpful. We really greatly appreciate that. Eric, do you have any follow-up on that?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, no, just again, thanks for all the residents that have participated in the process and that are staying engaged in the process. Look for more information coming in the near future on our website, et cetera. And we'll do our very best to keep as many people as satisfied as possible in our efforts.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, just to reiterate, please, again, encourage people to go on to Social Pinpoint and collecting information until September 13th, and more to come in October.
I want to ask a question about that Social Pinpoint.
Yep.
In the beginning, it was really easy to use because each marker was an individual marker, and now that there's enough comments, they're kind of consolidating. So when you zoom into an area, it just says 71, and then you zoom in, and it's like 4822, and then you zoom in a little bit more, and it's so hard to use now. And I know that you guys are actually considering the likes and dislikes to certain comments on there. And if that's the case, obviously a lot of people would like to support comments that are on there and kind of like them, but it's become it's not possible anymore. Like you zoom into one spot and it moves and goes to another spot. And so I asked you to consider that too, in just the difficulty now in using this, to be able to kind of go in. You can leave a comment, but are we considering the likes and dislikes? Because if that's the case, please understand it's very difficult to use now.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, and so for those that maybe couldn't hear what she was asking at home, I'll kind of repeat.
Thank you.
So the comment is that the social pinpoint site has been used so much in some cases that it's hard to be able to like and dislike comments, because as you zoom in on what might be a circle of 70 comments, as you zoom into it, it spreads it out, and then it's hard to get to those comments and like or dislike things. That was basically the comment she made. And can you fix that? And or if you're giving that a lot of weight, know that that's hard to do. And so I'll try to, well, I do have a meeting with our vendor that's doing that for us tomorrow to see if there's something they can do to fix that. And if they can't, we'll certainly keep the second part of that comment, which is we just can't make comments. We can't like and dislike anymore because it's just too hard. We'll certainly keep that in mind as we go through the comments. So thanks for making the comment.
And we can still encourage people to still make comments.
Oh, yeah,
So if you're having a hard time, you know, you can say, I saw this, I like it here, instead of finding that thumbs up, you know, so don't hesitate to put the comments in there too. So, you know, but thanks for that feedback. Okay. All right. Thank you everyone again for all your comments and joining us today, and look for more information in October. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is an update on the Family Aquatic Center and the rebranding efforts.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Apple Valley Family Aquatic Center, again, part of the Parks Referendum. $8.2 million project, about 80% of that, or $6.5 million, is earmarked for the actual construction and the improvements to the water park. About 20% is referred to as soft costs, so that's the planning, the engineers, putting together the plans and specifications, hiring the construction manager. And then we have to have bonds and insurance and all that kind of stuff as we do these types of projects. We received bids from our construction manager late last week, and as we looked at them, and I'm obviously rounding numbers, they didn't come out this perfect, if you will, but they are in line with what we had anticipated as far as percentages are concerned. We're looking at CMAR fees of around $800,000. Planning fees were right around $600,000. We'll be making about $6.2 to $6.8 million. So the construction and the contingency added together is about $6.8 million in improvement, in actual construction improvements, and that rounds out the overall project budget of $8.2 million. As a part of this project, we are planning to rebrand and retheme the Aquatic Center. So instead of it being the Apple Valley Family Aquatic Center, it's now going to be referred to as Splash Valley Water Park. We haven't yet figured out exactly what that branding is going to look like, but we'll be working that over the next month or so. And that branding will be heavily using an otter to do that. And we see that branding across the park through the signage, through different characters, and through some of the play toys and water features that will be added to the water park, helping us emphasize that brand and create that theme for the water park. As we go through the water park, again, built about 25 years ago, so kind of before the ADA was in effect, we are trying to do everything we can to the facility to make sure that we're meeting and where we can exceed the ADA requirements for the facility. So that includes the slope of concrete, that includes door hardware, that includes showers and bathrooms and toileting facilities, the pool entrance and exit, again, signage. Believe it or not, we don't have Braille signage in the facility, so that's an ADA requirement that we are going to update and upgrade, if you will. And while our architects are familiar with building codes and they have one interpretation of what the ADA is, we hired somebody that specializes in ADA to make sure that we get it right, if you will. And so they've reviewed our plans along the way a couple different times, made a bunch of suggestions that were incorporated into the improvements that we're planning to make. So we want people to know that we are trying to be as inclusive and as ADA compliant as possible as we make improvements to the water park. We'll be making some landscape improvements both on the curbside and inside the water park facility itself, on the island, underneath the slides, the sand area right now that's at the water park will all get grassed in. There'll be additional shade there, et cetera. Pool improvements will be replastering both pools, gel coating the slides, and really what that means is that we're not replacing the slides, but we're going to be refurbishing them, and we're going to make them look like new. Again, 25 years old for the most part. The sun, the ultraviolet rays have gotten to them. They look a little bit worn out. They look a little bit dull maybe, but we're going to re-energize them and make them look new again without replacing them. So in some respects, we're recycling the slides. And so there'll be new colors, they'll fit with our theme, etc. We'll be updating all of the pool gutters, and then all of the stairs to the slides and the landings on all of the different slides that we have. Concession stand improvements, we'll be adding some shade out front so that if you're standing in line, you're not standing on blistering hot concrete. Making some service window improvements and improvements to the inside of the facility. So hopefully we can serve people more efficiently, a little quicker so that the line doesn't get too deep. We'll be doing some concession equipment upgrades. And then the HVAC equipment we have in the space, it doesn't work really well and it can get kind of hot in there for some of our employees. So we'll be updating that equipment to make it a little bit more comfortable for the employees working in the concession stand. One of the things that we heard as part of the referendum process was adding shade to the facility. So there's a number of places in which we're adding shade. We're keeping a lot of the shade that we have, but we're also adding additional shade across the facility. We are going to be improving the perimeter fencing and providing some emergency exits around the facility so that in case of emergency, people have ways to get out of the facility other than through the front gate, which depending on where you're at in the facility, could take you a while to get to the front gate, especially if it's an emergency. At one point in time, we had thought about putting a fence across the facility to split the zero depth entry pool from the lazy river, with the thought of making the zero depth entry pool a little less expensive to rent for private occasions. But when we started to do the math on the cost of the fence and the revenues that we would be generating, it just doesn't pay for itself. So we've kind of abandoned that idea. A lot of mechanical system improvements. We're replacing both pool filters, the one for the splash for the lazy river and the other for the zero depth entry. The new pool filters will use about 800,000 gallons of water less annually, which is about 25% of the water we use at the water park. Which means we also will be using a little bit less energy, and we should be saving about $11,000 through the new pool filters. We're replacing pool boilers, other HVAC equipment, plumbing and electrical upgrades, and then making improvements to the bathhouse. And in the bathhouse, along with ADA improvements, we're going to be in the lower right-hand corner of the bathhouse there. There's 2 rooms that will become ADA compliant. We'll put an adult changing table in the one on the left, making other ADA modifications to the entire bathhouse facility, and then making improvements to the admissions area so that we can hopefully get more people through the door quicker in the beginning of the day, because there's usually a line up and down the sidewalk if you're there right when we open. Additionally, we're going to be adding a little bit of solar to the facility. We're only open 60 to 70 days a year, so it's hard to make a huge investment in solar, but we are going to be putting a little bit of rooftop solar on the bathhouse, on the concession stand. It'll provide enough power to run one of the HVAC units and some of the lights in one of our filter buildings. And then from a construction standpoint, next Thursday, we expect the council to approve a contract to have this work accomplished. Contractors will start here at the end of September. They'll work through the rest of the fall, through the winter, into the spring. Should be completed by the end of May, and then we'll open up in June of 25, hopefully to a refreshed, rebranded facility that people will enjoy. Questions that committee members may have, and really the action that we're looking for you to make is just to support the rebranding effort and the new name and the theming that we showed earlier in the slide, and I'll go back to that slide here. So I can answer any questions you may have.
So I have more of a comment than a question. My 5-year-old daughter adores the dinosaur in front of the pool. It's her favorite part of going, is sitting on the dinosaur and taking a picture and feeding it little bits of gravel that she picks up from it. and she wanted me to make sure that that stays. I understand that that may not fit with the more ottery theme, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that something large, animal-like, that she can climb on at the front gate would be appreciated on a more personal level for me.
Yeah.
So.
I don't think that's part of our plan right now. We haven't decided exactly what we're gonna do with the dinosaur. I do know it's not going in a dumpster and it's not going away. So the dinosaur will show up somewhere, and maybe it'll be like, a little contest we'll have is, where is the dinosaur at? I'm not sure exactly yet, though.
Sounds good. Thanks.
I'll just want to say, compliment Nate and the rest of the team on the rebranding effort. The Apple Valley Family Aquatic Center is tough to market with that whole thing, and this can really help us position it as an enjoyable place for the community and neighboring communities to come visit. So I think it looked great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, so I'm looking to entertain a motion to accept or approve the rebranding efforts for the Apple Valley Aquatic Center, or hopefully soon to be known as Splash Valley Water Park.
So moved.
Second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the rebranding efforts as presented, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next one on their agenda is the Youth Baseball Softball Complex.
Is there any, I don't know if there's any feedback?
Oh, sorry, yes, well, is there any comments for anybody from the public wanting to speak on the Apple Valley Aquatic Center and the rebranding efforts? All right. Thanks, Dave. Hearing none, all right. Moving on to item number C, the Youth Baseball Softball Complex.
All right, so the next project that we want to talk about is the Hayes Westview Elementary Athletic Field Improvements. Again, part of the 2023 Parks Referendum. This is a $5.2 million project. We have about 4.1 earmarked towards construction and about $1 million in some of our soft costs. We have done, at least from our perspective, we've tried to do quite a bit of public process through this, because this is close to a neighborhood, and it's a significant change to what happens in the space. So as a part of the referendum, this was a major focus of the referendum. Since that time, we've held a couple of neighborhood meetings where we've sent letters to the neighborhood. We've invited the users in. We wanted to get their input, their feedback. We wanted to understand their concerns to see how we could potentially address those concerns. We've met with the VAA and the EVAA. We've been in contact with both hockey associations. We've been in meetings with the school district, because some of it, the property belongs to them. And so we need to work out issues that they may have. And so we've also mailed letters to the neighborhood on multiple occasions, including noticing the neighborhood that tonight we were meeting to talk about this, and that you would be considering a concept at this meeting this evening. So the concept that we want the committee to review and hopefully support is that the youth baseball softball complex would be a 4-field complex configured in what's referred to as a wheel. It would be natural grass and with dirt infields. The turf would be irrigated. We would have covered dugouts. The fields would be lighted for evening play or for after dark play. There would be batting cages, and we're still working on what the fence distances would be. And we'll have that in further iterations as we continue to refine the design process. The U13 field that's in the northeast corner of the park, or just to the right as you drive into the Hayes complex, would stay as is. We would add lights to it, and we would improve the bench area and provide some dugout updates. In a lot of the rest of the area, we would be constructing what we're referring to as flexible field space. So Today, there's 11 backstops between the Westview property and the Hayes Park property. There's 11 backstops. In the proposed layout, there would be 5 backstops, 4 on the wheel, 1 at the U13 field. So 6 of the backstops would be removed from the site. We would be removing the hockey and pleasure skating. The space would get regraded. It would all be irrigated, and the flexible field space could be laid out multiple different ways for soccer, football, and lacrosse, depending on the time of the year and the needs of the user groups that use these facilities. So changes to the site, again, 6 backstops removed, hockey and pleasure skating removed from the site, adding some type of stormwater treatment to the site. Don't know exactly what that's going to be, whether that's a wet pond or an infiltration basin, but we do know we need to add some stormwater treatment to the site. There would be some parking added to the site, and then there would be some connective trails added so that you can get from the parking lot to the different uses on the site. Want to make sure that we point out that there's no proposed building or concession stand in the middle of the wheel. There would not be nothing constructed there. So that would be served by both portable toilets, and then what we're hoping and planning for is when we put the addition on the community center and the senior center on the back side of that, there would be bathrooms and potentially a concession stand available or accessible from the outside on the back side of the building to serve those restroom facility needs. Let's see, what else do I have here? And then we have already moved forward with burying the overhead power lines that ran down the property line between Westview Elementary and the Hayes Park site. In this plan, the current VAA building wouldn't be relocated. It would be torn down and a new facility would be constructed, about 1,500 square feet, so that they could store all of the equipment that they have that they need for all of the sports that they sponsor. And next to that, or adjacent to that, would be about 2,000 square feet of, I'll call it garage space for city equipment. Because of the sports complex, we'll need to have some lawnmowers and some ball field equipment there on site to maintain that. So that space would be, or that facility would be built on the end of the parking lot between the senior center and the Hayes Arena. It would take up a few parking stalls, but not a tremendous amount of parking stalls. From a construction schedule standpoint, we'd probably be looking at a phased construction, probably starting with the wheel and the flexible field space just to the north of where the wheel is, get that up and operating, and then once that's up and operating, work on the rest of the space. We could not afford to have all of it under construction at one time. It would just be too devastating to all of the youth athletics that happened. We are working with the school district on a joint powers agreement for the property. Again, they own a fair amount of the property. They do use the property for high school athletics, mostly practices, and so we need to make sure that their needs are being met, and we're working through the intricacies of the joint powers agreement with the school district. It's something that's pretty common. We have a number of joint powers agreements with the school district for Valley Middle School, for Johnny Cake West / Eastview High School, etc. So just, I guess, one slide I want to show before we go to questions is, so the picture on the left is kind of an aerial of what it looks like today, and the picture on the right is what it's going to look like in the future if this concept continues to move forward. So want to make sure people understand the differences between the two. And then with that, I can answer questions.
Thanks, Eric. Questions, comments from committee?
I'll just make a quick comment, I guess, and I had the pleasure before joining this committee to serve on the board with EVAA and be part of this from an early state. You said it, this is probably the most significant project within the whole referendum, just based on how the land is being used, right? And so I want to acknowledge that. And there was a lot of passion that came out of those discussions, and I quite honestly didn't think you guys were going to get to consensus on this one, but you did. And I'm pleased with the output. I'm excited for our kids, and I'm excited for the community, and I think you guys should get a little bit of kudos for working through this one, because this one wasn't easy.
I'll just add that I really like the idea of if we can have those bathrooms and a concession stand on that back side of the senior center and things like that. I think that could be used in lots of different ways, again, with the whole facility. And I don't know if Eric, you want to just talk a little bit. I know we had a question earlier about the playground, and if you want to mention that.
Yeah, thanks. So right now, there's a playground between the senior center and the community center, and basically it's going to be displaced because of the addition. And what we're planning to do is that playground's about 14 years old. We're going to plan to relocate it to just, I don't think this has a pointer on it. Maybe it does. Oh, it does. Did for a second. We're going to relocate the playground just to the south of the new addition between the two buildings. And so there will still be a playground inside, and obviously there's still going to be a playground over at Westview Elementary. Thank you.
There you
Kayla.
go. Thanks, Kayla.
Could you comment on the hockey associations and removing the hockey arena or outdoor hockey rinks and their thoughts on that?
So we help me out here, Brian. We reached out to them on more than one occasion to try to get feedback and comment from them, and maybe you can characterize what you heard or didn't hear.
Didn't hear anything back from them on that. And when they were at the neighborhood meetings, there was nothing mentioned from their side on it.
Thank you.
Tried to make sure that they understood what we were proposing and wanted to make sure that they knew they had an opportunity to either support or not to support.
Okay. With that,
Give the audience an opportunity to make comment. Okay.
Yeah. With that, given that this is the opportunity for anyone in the audience who's here with us today to comment, make any comments on this proposal with the youth baseball softball complex. So I invite anybody up who wants to make comments on that at this time. All right, not seeing anyone at this time. So with that, Eric, you are asking.
In a perfect world, like the committee to support the concept of that you see in front of you, that's natural grass, lighted 4-field wheel, a lighted U13 field in the northeast corner of the site with flexible field space, additional parking as a concept. And we'll continue to refine the concept, and there'll be more details brought back. Someone asked a question earlier about, trails and more of a park-like feel for those that might not be there for athletic purposes and might be there for just the park side of it. We'll be working on those details, and we'll be bringing those details forward as we refine the plan. This is just a concept at this point. It's important though for us to settle on a concept so that we can work on those finer details, and then not at the end of the process have someone say, well, wait a second, we really wanted it to be something else, because then we would have spent a lot of time and money for not.
All right, so just clarifying your kind of this initial concept to move forward with that, and then again work out all the finer details.
Yep.
To be coming. Okay.
I move that we recommend the youth baseball and softball concept to the city council for approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the initial concept, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
All right, thank you.
All right, so thank you for everybody sticking around. Had a lot on the agenda today, but the next one is the Alimagnet Natural Resource Management Plan.
All right, so this is another project that we've been working on. So Alimagnet Park is obviously in Apple Valley. It's also can be found in Burnsville, but at the Apple Valley side of things is found at 211 Ridgeview Drive. It's about 85 acres. In that park today is a couple of playgrounds, a bathroom / picnic shelter. There's 12 holes of disc golf. There's sand volleyball. There's some paved and natural trails, and then there's just a lot of wooded natural area. in the park, and there's also obviously lake access because of Alimagnet Lake. Again, the park does border the city of Burnsville, and the city of Burnsville has their version of Alimagnet Park, which is about 178 acres. So as part of the parks referendum, we had one of the things that we found out as we did some statistically accurate surveys of our community was that preserving and protecting natural resources was pretty important to folks. In fact, trails and natural resources were the two top topics when we surveyed folks. And so we wanted to make sure that as a part of the referendum, we were setting aside some dollars to make sure that we had the ability to do some things to help protect and preserve and enhance our natural resources. So we have $2 million allocated towards natural resources. So we have been working with Dakota County, and they hired a consultant called RES to develop a natural resource management plan for Alimagnet Park. That plan, I guess I'll get into that a little bit later, but that plan was posted online, and it generally has a historical context section of the plan, talks about land information about the plan, soil conditions, topography, that type of stuff, talks about water, ponds, swamps, things like that, the vegetation that can be found in the park, some of which is wanted vegetation, a lot of it which is unwanted or invasive type of vegetation. Talks a little bit about wildlife. The plan makes some recommendations and helps us put together a management plan for the park. As I mentioned, we put a draft copy of the Natural Resource Management Plan on our website so the public could look at it. We held an open house in July so the public could come and give us some feedback about what the plan says or didn't say. And then we updated the plan based on the feedback that we received. And so tonight you're looking at an updated plan based on all the input that we've received from residents on the draft plan. You're reviewing it tonight. We hope to have our city council review the draft plan in October. Then depending on how that conversation goes, hopefully have them adopt the plan in either October or November. The plan talks about some goals for the natural resource management plans of Alimagnet Park, and they're to try to maintain the natural areas, expand the ecological restoration and management of those areas, monitor progress of our restoration activities to make sure that we're actually making progress. And then it also talks a little bit about evaluating the pros and cons of disc golf and how it's used in the park and what the future of that might be. So the plan breaks the park into separate management units with different restoration goals per unit based on the floral and fauna that are found in each one of those units. It has a suggested work plan for each one of those units along with an estimated cost for that. And over the 5 years, it's estimated the cost to implement the plan is somewhere in the neighborhood of $535,000. So those that are close to natural resources and understand the process that we'll have to go through to restore Alimagnet Park won't be terribly surprised, but I think a lot of residents that aren't familiar with or don't understand the vegetation that's in Alimagnet Park might become alarmed as we start to do the restoration process, because we're going to end up removing a lot of plant material that is considered invasive or non-native. And things might look a little bare at first. So the picture on the left might look like parts of Alimagnet Park today, but the picture on the right is what we're trying to achieve. But in between that, in between those two times, it's going to look a little bit ugly, for lack of a better word, because to make progress, we have to take things out, and there'll be some disruption. But there'll be a plan for it. And Samantha Berger from our natural resource staff will be leading that effort, and she's here tonight to help answer questions that people might have, and she can get way more technical with this stuff than I can, and that's part of why she's here. But want people to understand that the picture on the left is what it might look like today. The picture on the right is where we're trying to get to in some parts of the park. Other parts of the park will look different than that, but it's going to take time. It's going to take some patience. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take some money. Again, we're working in partnership with Dakota County on this. They have some money that we can use to implement some of these, so it won't necessarily be all of our $535,000 that we invest in this. Dakota County has access to state money and other grants that they can help us with. Again, it's gonna take multiple years to implement the plan. In the beginning, it may not look good, but we'll get there as long as people are patient and as long as we stick with it. Two issues that were raised in the neighborhood meeting were wildlife management, specifically deer, and concerns of residents with the deer population in Alimagnet Park and or the surrounding neighborhoods. I think I want people to know that we've heard that and that we're working towards understanding what is a deer management plan and how do we go about developing one and what are the steps that we have to go through to do that. And so while we don't have one today, we're working in that direction. The other fairly significant concern that we heard at the open house was disc golf and concern from residents about that. And at this point in time, we're not talking about changing the disc golf. But at the end of the day, it might stay as is, it might get reduced, it might get expanded. But until we have a better handle on managing our natural resources and understanding the impacts that may or may not have on the park, we're not planning to do anything to change the disc golf experience in the park. And so that's at this point, that's not an issue that we're gonna change. We're gonna wait to see what happens with the natural resource side of things. So I think that's probably my last slide. Yeah, it is. Yep. So Sam, is there anything else you wanna add at this point? Perfect.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm Samantha Berger, the Natural Resources Coordinator for the City of Apple Valley. First off, I just want to thank the public for those who participated in the process and who made comments on this. We really want to kind of mimic what Burnsville has done on their Alimagnet side of the park. We actually utilize the same consultant and kind of the same process to create this plan. And we do work closely with the City of Burnsville just in terms of our lake management activities. Just to kind of speak a little bit more about that, because I come from the water quality world, is we're currently actually planning a alum treatment on Alimagnet Lake to try to improve the water quality. It's a very effective treatment that can actually clear up the water very quickly, so we're excited to be actually implementing that this fall. It is typically a multi-phase process, so it will occur again in a few years, but we will begin that this fall, as mentioned. And in addition, just with the plan in front of you, this has taken some time for us to develop it. So some of the dates kind of mentioned spring, summer 2024. It is possible that we should maybe update that just so that those dates are a little more accurate. So there may be just some minor changes, but we did hear from the public and we did make modifications to the plan just to call out the wildlife management piece and also the disc golf concern as well. So just want to make that a point. And we also have already actually applied for a grant, the Bowser Help Grant. It's Habitat Enhancement Landscape Program. I might be getting that a little bit wrong, but we will be looking to hear back from that in September, so hopefully soon here. And with that, we looked at our kind of the 5-year work plan that was identified and kind of took off a small bite of priority 1, just because this is something we haven't really pursued, is kind of a large-scale buckthorn management primarily to restore the wooded area. And so we just want to kind of take off a smaller piece that will actually be working from the west side of the park where Burnsville has already started these efforts. And kind of wherever a trail is, that's kind of where we outline the area. And so we're applied for about an $87,500 grant. So we're hopeful to receive that, and we're also looking to at other possible grants, such as the DNR has a Conservation Partners Legacy Grant, and so that's something that would be a good grant for us to apply for, and the City of Burnsville has received grants for doing those sorts of efforts already. And because of our good partnership with Burnsville, we want to try to utilize that and try to save money by if we can use the same contractor. So those are kind of some of the main things I wanted to highlight, and if you guys have specific questions, I'm happy to answer them, but this is something that we're excited to do and pursue. And we have been a little short-staffed this season, but we're hopefully getting fuller staff soon and are really hoping to take on a new forester position as well to kind of help with some of these efforts. So.
Thank you.
I guess
I have a question. This plan, it took and divided the park up into 4 areas. I mean,
There's kind of some different land management
there's 1,
unit
2, 3, and 4, and basically it broke that down into timeframes as far as in area 3, which is the southwest portion, was the one that they talked about in the first 5 years. The other 3, it said it would be after 5 years. I mean, and that 500 and some thousand, is that just to do then the first phase, which would be area 3, or is that, or I guess I'm not sure.
All 5 years, yep. All 5 years it would be. And the reason we prioritized Area 3 was because it was adjacent to the city of Burnsville efforts already. And so that's kind of where we wanted to start, and then kind of start working our way eastward, if you will. And then, yeah, ultimately for priority 1, which was unit 3, the total cost was about $148,900. And that includes all 5 years.
So, so the 5 years is for the whole park, for all 4 of those areas? Okay, because that's not what it says in here. It says basically area 3 is going to be done in the first 5 years.
So if I can clarify, there are 8 units listed.
Yeah.
Well,
4 are identified for the 5 years. It's the other 4 that say work may continue beyond 5 years. It may be planned beyond 5 years.
Well,
Is
but-
that what you're asking about? Is
no,
those
there's
others?
4 areas. There's additional areas that talk about wetlands, but I mean, in terms of that map, it shows you, wherever the map is.
This guy here.
Yes. There's 4 areas, and
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
if you follow in there, it tells you on each one of those what is recommended to be done and what time frame it is. And it's area 3 is the one that talks about being done in the first 5 years. The others, it basically said those would come afterwards, so after 5 years.
Sure. So the 4 areas are the 4 priority areas in a 5-year work plan. So there are actually 8 or 9 management units. And so, for instance, management unit 3 is priority 1,
Right,
if that makes sense. And the management units were based off land use, the type of
okay.
vegetation
I guess
present.
that's where I wasn't sure if we're talking about, this is a 5-year plan for the entire park, not just the section 3 or area 3. I'm not making this up. I can tell by the looks. That's, I've seen that look, it's like, okay, let me try that again.
No, there's 4 different management units that are
Yes.
part of the 5-year work plan.
Yeah.
And so in the future, we'll need to expand it to another 5-year work plan, if you will. So this is just our starting point. We'll
Right.
continue to build on the plan and start, tackling those other areas as well, if that makes sense.
Yes, so in other
So the
words,
total, to implement everything in the plan will probably be more than 535,000. So
Right.
the 5-year work plan, 535.
those 4 areas in the next 5 years will have all of the buckthorn and the stuff that there's talking about will be done in those 5 years.
Yep, that's the idea. That's kind of our goal, is
All right.
just to kind of tackle those first.
All right,
4 areas,
that
okay.
explains it to me.
Okay, sorry, thank you.
I just want to say this is great, huge undertaking, and I'm very happy that the city is doing that. I have a couple of questions. The first one being, there was in the packet we got, there was a survey of plant species that had been identified and which were native and non-native. And in one of the areas, if I'm reading correctly, one of the areas that was outside of the next 5-year plan, there was Japanese knotweed identified. Is that something that we would handle with a higher priority given its proclivity to spread and the difficulty to remove it? I wouldn't want it to grow into a much larger thicket over the next 6 years and then not be able to manage it.
Sure, thank you. You bring up a really good point. It's actually something that we've already been tackling, and we've actually already been kind of tackling some of these invasive species that are already outlined in the plan. So one of other area would be like purple loosestrife that's present in one of the wetlands. And so, you know, we obviously have this plan in place, but we obviously recognize that there's some invasives that we need to tackle. And so those are things that we already are tackling currently.
Okay,
So,
good to hear.
yeah, the Japanese knotweed is a tough one. And we have actually put up some signs. We might need to refresh those signs in the park that we are tackling that. There's actually some black fabric that's laid out to try
Because you
to.
can't cut it or it spreads more, which is
Yep,
what
yep,
makes it
it's
so
tricky.
difficult. The one other thing that I noticed in here is on the trails section towards the very end. It says that monitoring of trails for their condition and stability is recommended. Is there, so I understand that any rerouting of the trails may not be inside the purview of the natural resources plan itself. However, I would hate to, in the next 5 years, start work in some of these areas, and then when we get to another area, say, oh, we should reroute this trail, and we wish that we had, you know, changed this other trail to make a loop or expanded some trail access in the areas that we've already been through. Is there any sort of a mechanism or review of the actual trails themselves so that those changes could be incorporated as these initial plans are being kicked off, to avoid double work and kind of get the most out of our trail system in this park?
Sure, thanks for that question. That is a good point. In some ways, perhaps the natural resources may inform trail locations, but with how thick the buckthorn is, we might just not know it until it's cleared away. And I don't know if that's going to be happening on a different time frame. Maybe Eric can speak to that, but right now hasn't been part of this purview, but it's something that we could definitely consider.
Okay. I'd just like to keep it in mind, because it's a great park, and I think to the extent that we can expand the trails that are there and fix the eroded ones as we're already in the area doing maintenance work, it'd be a great thing. So thank you.
And I do recognize there's been a lot of comments about like mountain biking trails and if that's something that would be considered. And so there are those sorts of things that may come up. And I don't know, how do you make a good mountain biking trail? You know, we'd probably have to look into that.
Yes,
further,
the Minnesota Off-Road Cycling Association to do it, because they are experts.
Fair enough.
So the 500 and some thousand that we're talking about, that does not include any trail reconstruction or anything?
No.
Okay. Do we have any idea what trail how much that is gonna cost? And is that coming out of the 2 million then, that?
We haven't spent any time studying trails in the park at this point in time.
But they will need to be done. I mean, they're in horrible shape. I mean,
At this point in time, we haven't spent any energy on trails.
okay,
We're working on this plan.
right, okay.
So to reiterate what Eric said, at this point in time, we have not spent any time or effort on doing trail work in the park. And also, I'd like to note that this process started before the park's referendum passed. And so we obviously have more information now, but we're kind of eager to get started and to start implementing these things. And these sorts of plans are kind of a living document. You know, we have a 5-year work plan. They're a good starting point for us. You know, there's definitely some goals outlined, but they kind of may change if we see something on site that might be something we want to preserve. It's really a good place for us to start getting grants, quite frankly. So.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I took away is that there's a lot of work that really needs to be done in this park, and a lot more invasive species than I think people realize, which I think goes back to Eric's comment that people may notice it feeling maybe destroyed a little bit as all those removals are taking place, and we can get it back into the natural state of it all. So, okay. Other questions from the committee at this time?
Just had a question about the lake itself. You said that you're gonna be using that is it alum treatment?
Alum, aluminum sulfate, yep.
Okay. Do we know what kind of fish are in that lake?
We do have fish surveys that are done. Alum is actually a very safe product to use. It's been used for years, and so there's not really a concern. They actually monitor the pH to ensure that that won't affect the fish. It's a process we utilized in Keller Lake. It's a process that's been used all across the metro. We actually received a grant to complete an alum treatment study before even implementing an alum treatment plan. They require that in order to actually receive a grant to do alum treatment, and so it's something that's been well researched, and we're working with Bar Engineering, who has implemented this all across the metro and are really a great resource, great limnologist, great lake scientist to help us with that and to manage the project.
Are there fish in there that people would want to fish for? I mean, if we put a fishing pier in, I mean, is it
Yeah, I would say, yep, it's
good
definitely.
fish to eat? Okay.
All right. At this time, I would like to invite any members from the public to, if there's any comments or feedback or questions about the Alimagnet Natural Resource Management Plan at this time. Just kind of to reiterate, welcome to step up to the mic. Please say your name, your address. Again, we're here to be listening at this point, and please be respectful of time so others can share their thoughts and comments too. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and the committee members. I'm actually pretty ecstatic about this plan. My name is Brad Blackett at 457 Reflection Road, and that's where I've been living for the last 58 years. I grew up on Lake Alimagnet, seen a lot of things go on, and in particular, I want to bring some history to light. In 1969, the Township of Lebanon had a park committee, and my neighbor, who became my mentor, didn't realize that until this year, that part of who I am today, I owe to him. Nick Wagner. He insisted, before the development occurred along Lake Shore with more houses, that this park be purchased, or I should say acquired, because I'm not exactly sure how it was purchased. Because back then they had some things called an eminent domain, and they may have taken the land. I can't find the records that say the initial process. I know that later on, LACON funds were used. And then as encroachment on the edges occurred, they had the developer donated land as well as that designated park fund that some of the money goes to. It took about 7 years for the first park management plan to occur in 1976. And so that was like 7 years, and then it took almost, I had it down, but I lost the number, but eventually in the 80s, when some of the LACON funds became available, the work actually started before a bond issue that failed, and Alimagnet was blamed for that, failure of that, because they didn't see the purpose of expanding the land holding at the time. And go back to my notes here. There was a lot of work done, particularly where we have the playground, the parking lot, the driveway. All that was done in the 80s. There's a pond, it says 5A on it up on the map here, just north of the developed area. And it was dredged to accommodate the drainage from the grading that was done on the physical part of the south end of the park there. After that, well, it was in the mid-70s also when oak wilt and Dutch elm disease hit the city. So there was a forestry management plan done at that time for Alimagnet, and a lot of work where the existing trails through Burnsville and parts of Apple Valley were established with heavy equipment that was used to put in barriers. These barriers are cutting the roots. So it's a vibrator plow, much like you get cable put in your backyard, but a giant one that required construction of these trails, which today have been used as cross-country ski trails and hiking trails, of course, during the summer. It then took many more years before any real effort well, they were put an outlet for the maintaining the lake level. That was also done in the early 80s. But it wasn't until 2014 that some real work started on removing invasive species with the Great River Greening grant. The following year, there was a forestry mow that was done adjacent to that project. Then everything was forgotten and nothing more in the process. So that's why I'm ecstatic to see that we're finally coming up some 55 years after the park was established. We're finally getting to the point where we're going to be making the vision of the township committee of having a nature sanctuary type park where people could come and enjoy nature. And I'm hoping you guys will approve this to move it forward to the city council for their approval. And I want to thank you for listening to this. And I just wanted to give you a historical perspective of how long I've been waiting for this moment to occur. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. Really appreciate the history and the background.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, Madam Chair, committee members, thank you. I would just like to extend the thanks to Parks and Rec Committee and the Parks and Rec Department. I'm also very happy about this plan, and thank you for listening to the comments from the community related to the deer management. I think that was very important to include that information in this plan. And as well, the acknowledgement that, disc golf may not be conducive to the ecological restoration efforts. So I very much appreciate taking the extra time on those kind of decisions. So, and being one of the members of Apple Valley Eco Advocates, I am also very excited to be working on the buckthorn bust this month in Alimagnet Park. It's our inauguration buckthorn bust. So hoping for many more in the future, and thank you again.
Could you just share your name and your address?
Sorry, did I forget that? Sorry. Cindy Diaz, 169 Stussy Lane.
Thanks, Cindy. And when is the buckthorn bust?
September 28th, 9 a.m. If anybody is available, come join us.
Thanks, Cindy. Anyone else would like to speak about the Alimagnet Natural Resource Management Plan? Oh, coming back up, Sam.
I do just want to say two more things.
Sure.
One, I do want to thank the Eco Advocates for their volunteer efforts. And yeah, we are very excited for them to kind of start tackling a small piece. We kind of looked over an area that's something that they can tackle. So we're excited to see that effort come into play. And then I also just want to say that in terms of our efforts as a city, we are starting small. I think I did mention we're starting with that 12-acre parcel, and just we want to make sure that that's successful and not bite off more than we can chew. And we did kind of discuss with Burnsville how much they tackle at a time, just because this is something that they've done previously. And if people are interested in what that looks like, Oak Terrace Parks in Burnsville is a good place to go check out. And thank you to the committee.
Great. Thank you. And so, Eric, I believe that you're asking for a motion to approve the plan?
Yeah, recommend to the city council that they adopt the draft natural resource management plan for Alimagnet Park.
Great.
I move that we recommend that the city council adopt the natural resources management plan.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the Alimagnet Natural Resource Management Plan. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are recommending it. All right, moving on to item number 6 is the committee staff discussion updates and the park referendum update. We've had
I kind of gave you everything we've got.
I feel like it's been a lot tonight.
I've said enough.
Any comments or questions, updates from committee members at this time? Yeah, Randy, go ahead.
I think this is good news. I've got some friends in the brokerage world, and they got a hold of me today. Said, hey, Randy, guess what's available? The first round of Apple Valley General Obligation Bonds in support of the Park and Rec referendum is out there and available for you investors to purchase. So I said, sign me up.
All right, there you go. Make your own investment.
It's real, folks. It really is real.
Selling those bonds to make all this happen.
Yeah.
So, thanks, Randy. Anything else from committee?
One thing I'd ask if it's possible, I don't know if it's kosher since it's not an official parks event, it would be great if we could boost through social channels or on our website the Buckthorn Bus that's planned, just so there's more awareness of it. I don't know if that's allowed, but if it is, that would be a great use of our reach.
Some good head nodding over there, so great. All right. Item number 7 is kind of on the next agenda, a future meeting item to talk about the park dedication, and that's on there for future topics. Is there anything else anybody would like to add on that in the future at this point?
Yeah, I just, we talked about the joint powers agreement with the district at Hayes. At some point in the future, sometime maybe in the next year, if we could get a summary of the other joint powers agreements the Parks organization has with them, that would be great.
Yeah, Madam Chair, members of the committee, we are hoping to update all of the joint powers agreements that we have, and as we do and when we do, we'll bring those to the Parks Committee so that you can know what's going on, what changes we're hoping to make, or that we, from a staff perspective, agree with the school district on, and vice versa. So you'll be aware of that as we do that.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, Eric. They're a good partner. Keep that going. So with that, we are at the end.
So this update is on the park dedication fund?
Yes, that was the Park Dedication Fund, if I recall.
That we have a,
Yeah, I think it was Dave that asked for an update, or was it you, Mark? Okay, I'm sorry. It was Mark then. Kind of wanted an overview of park dedication and how does it work and how much money do we have and things like that. And that was a number of months ago. We have it on the agenda so we don't forget about it. It just been busy with lots of other things, to be honest.
could we also look at the park facilities fund
Yes.
and just,
That's different, but yes.
well, I know they're different, but, and maybe that point out the differences and just, how much is there, how does it get in there, how does it get spent, just kind of a general overlay of both those.
Yep. I'm
Give you
smiling.
something to do.
I'm smiling because maybe we'll invite our finance director to a meeting and have him give a little update.
Love to see them. Okay, so we're adding the summary of the joint power agreements and then Park Facilities Fund.
Yep.
All right. All right. With that, we're at the end of our agenda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.